Today, we're looking at an Intel Nuc clone that costs considerably less than an Intel Nuc. But how does it perform? I don't know. Let's find out. Stay tuned. Computers are getting expensive. Over the last couple of years, the computers that I build for customers have gone up considerably. However, even with prices high, you still occasionally come across a deal, and that's what we're looking at today with the GEEKOM Mini IT8. I hope I pronounced that right. This mini PC retails for $449. So, is this the most affordable PC on the market, or is it just another cheap PC? Believe it or not, there really is a difference. I see computers all the time for under $500, but typically those PCs are so under spec that you probably would have been better off with a Chromebook in the first place. The system we're looking at today is an 8th generation Intel i5. It comes with 16 gigs of RAM and has a 512 gigabyte M2 SSD. You might ask yourself, why are we looking at a computer with a processor that's 3 generations behind? I mean, Intel's 8th generation was released in 2017. That's 5 years old now. But to answer that question, we need to take into account the fact that the 8th generation Intel processor is still a pretty good CPU. I mean, you know what? Most computers in this price bracket are going to come with a Celeron. And if that would have been the case, I wouldn't have even bothered reviewing this thing. Seriously though, I would take an 8th generation i5 over an 11th gen Celeron any day. This system comes with 2 USB ports in the back and 1 USB port in the front, as well as a USB-C in the back and front as well. Unfortunately, the USB-C is not Thunderbolt, so adding an external GPU to the system probably isn't going to be an option. However, the system does have a mini DisplayPort in the back as well as an HDMI port. Since the USB-C in the back also supports video out, you could run up to 3 monitors. But the documentation says it'll run up to 4, and I'm assuming that's by using the USB-C in the front, but I'm not sure about that. However, personally, I don't like running permanent peripherals off the front of the case. And with that said, it brings up an issue that I found. If you want to use external speakers, you're going to have to plug them into the front audio jack. I found that kind of annoying, especially since the audio jack in the front is so close to the front USB port that it makes it difficult plugging a thumb drive into the front USB port. But if you're running audio over HDMI, then you should be fine. The system also has an SD card reader on the side, as well as a Kingston security slot on the other side. I've always thought that those Kingston security locks were kind of stupid, but with a system this small, it might make it a little harder to walk off with. The system also comes with gigabit Ethernet as well as Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so you shouldn't have any problems with network connectivity. This mini PC comes pre-installed with Windows 11 Pro. I have to say, I really like the fact that they included Pro instead of Home. Most systems that fall into this category would opt for Home instead of Pro, and in most cases, they'll actually come with S mode turned on. And to be perfectly honest with you, I thought that was going to be the case with this system. I was honestly pleasantly surprised that it came with Windows 11 Pro. And with that said, it also came with absolutely no OEM bloatware. It did come with the Windows 11 bloatware, of course, but nothing installed by the manufacturer. The system was completely stripped down and a default install of Windows 11. In the package that I got, it included an HDMI cable as well as a mini DisplayPort to HDMI adapter. It also includes a VESA mount if you would like to mount the system right behind the monitor and keep it off your desk completely. And then finally, it also came with a power brick. This system uses an external power supply like a notebook. As for productivity, this system should be able to run any Office app that you would need. I don't see any reason why the system should not be able to run Word, Excel, or even a free alternative to Microsoft Office if that's what you use. If you're just looking for a system to be able to run productivity apps or even surf the web occasionally, then this is definitely going to fit that need. However, I would definitely recommend against using this for video editing. If you're looking to do video editing, then mini PCs in general should probably be avoided. But you know what? With that said, we can't test a system without testing its ability to game, because We use our systems for more than just writing Word documents and ordering stuff on Amazon. Unfortunately, this one doesn't do very well. Typically, an 8th generation Intel processor should be able to support many of the latest GPUs, at least the latest mid-range GPUs. Unfortunately, there's no way you're gonna fit a GPU into this little case. So, you're gonna have to stick with Intel's Iris graphics that come integrated on the system. I tested several games with this system with kind of mixed results. By mixed, I mean mediocre to poor. Games like CSGO, which typically run on a potato, were playable with an average frame rate of about 40 FPS. This frame rate would spike to almost 60 at times, but it would also drop to about 16 at times as well. This was playable, but definitely not optimal. GTA 5 was about the same, with an average of around 30 FPS, with spikes as high as 60. It really depended on how fast you're driving and what's going on in the game. GTA was actually quite playable, with only the occasional stuttering. Unfortunately, that stuttering would often take place in the absolute most inconvenient times. But for the most part, the game was playable. And in fact, while taking the screen capture for this video, I literally had to force myself to quit the game and stay on track while I was writing this script. I also had to try Cyberpunk. I knew beforehand that this system would never be able to play Cyberpunk, but I had to just see what it looked like. I was expecting this game to be an absolute catastrophic failure, and I definitely wasn't disappointed in that regard. In Cyberpunk, I averaged around 13 FPS, with the graphics so low you couldn't make out half the stuff on the screen. The game literally played like a slideshow, as expected of course. And to be honest with you, the fact that the computer could even launch this game to begin with is kind of a little impressive. But you're not going to be spending much time in this game with this system. Other games didn't do much better either. As Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the game was completely unplayable, but I was able to at least run a benchmark, and as expected, it averaged about 14 FPS. Dirt Rally 2, on the other hand, was able to maintain almost 80 FPS. That is, of course, with the graphics turned to ultra low at 720p. As you can see from the screen capture, it didn't look very pretty. When I increased the graphics to 1080 with high settings, it averaged a little under 30 FPS. It was playable, but not very fun to play. Now, you know what? This system was never marketed as a gaming system, and I didn't expect it to do very well in gaming. It performed pretty much how I figured it would. What surprised me was that a few titles were actually pretty playable. So, if you're into older games, then this system might actually do pretty good. Since I was doing some gaming tests, I decided to fire up GeForce Now and see how it worked as a way to stream games, and you know, that didn't disappoint at all. Using the GeForce Now RTX 3080 tier, I was able to get RTX 3080-like performance off of every game I tried. But you know, this is to be expected, because essentially all you're doing is streaming the game from another computer across the internet. But if you'd like to game on a system like this, then a service like GeForce Now is definitely the way to do it. Now, in regards to upgradability, this system has 4 captive screws that not only hold the feet on, but when removed will allow you to access the bottom of the system where you can upgrade the memory and M.2 SSD drive. It also has provisions for adding a second SSD in the bottom of the case. This is a really nice feature. It's not often that you can find ultra mini PCs that have the ability to run a second hard drive. Also, if you take a look at the back panel that holds the secondary drive, it has a thermal pad that comes into contact with the M.2 drive inside the system. And you know what? Speaking of cooling, I tore this thing apart before even turning it on. When removing the top of the case, you can see the shroud of the notebook style cooler that's included with the system. I was honestly a little skeptical that this was going to keep it cool. However, after running Prime 95 for about an hour, the temperature never went over 90°C. What was even more impressive about this is that even when running Prime 95, I never heard the fan unless I literally put my ear all the way up to the system. For cooling, both sides of this case have vents to allow fresh air to be drawn in and blown out. So depending on where you're running this system, you shouldn't have much of a cooling problem at all. My AC was set to 75 Fahrenheit during testing, and the system never went over 90 C. That was with Prime 95 running. Typically, the system stayed in the 70s. Now, since this computer is supposed to be a clone of the Intel Nuc, we should probably compare it to the Nuc. Intel sells the Nuc as a bare-bones system that you add your own memory and hard drive to. I found the Nuc available on Amazon as a bare-bone for $449. So that means this system in its current configuration with 16 gigs of RAM and a 512 gig SSD costs the same as a bare-bone Nuc. That would require you to add your own memory and SSD. That's honestly a pretty good savings. However, you have to keep in mind that the Intel that I used for comparison was an 11th gen. I did, however, find a 10th gen i5 Nuc with the same configuration as this system for about $600. This system is almost identical to the Nuc except for one small detail. It's a little bit taller than the Nuc to accommodate for the ability to add a second SSD in the bottom of the case. So, should you buy it? Well, that depends on what you want to do. If you're looking for a system that you're primarily going to play games on, then you should probably stay away from this system. However, if you're looking for a system that you can do productivity work on, maybe surf the web, and you don't mind doing your gaming over a streaming service like GeForce Now, at $449, this system is a pretty good value. And if you don't mind waiting until Black Friday, I hear this thing might actually be going on sale for even less. But with all that said, if you do pick this system up and you want to try gaming on a streaming service like GeForce Now, then check out this video where I look at the RTX 3080 tier. It's actually a pretty impressive service. Have a great day.